So recently I read this post on Instagram, and it's about like modern Buharis, which is like modern daughter-in-laws. So they post like stories and stuff, anonymous posts, and I was reading a post which said how this girl came from a very like liberal family, and then she was married to a traditional family. So the first week she was like, of course, busy like visiting relatives and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
then the second week there was a lockdown because of COVID. She was stuck at home, and she is a girl who like never got up before 9 a.m. And then
Me. Except for a work day.
yeah, and then by 9 a.m. her mother-in-law would finish cleaning the whole house. You know how like we have a ritual, like we have to clean the whole house in the morning, and then she would be done by preparing food, and then
Yeah.
that's when the daughter-in-law would wake up, and that went on for a month or two, and then she kind of felt guilty about it.
Yeah.
And she decided one day, like she's gonna wake up early and clean and cook. And
Yeah.
then, so one day she wake up like super early, and then turns out her mother-in-law is furious with her because she said like as long as I'm alive, she doesn't want the daughter-in-law to do all this stuff because that's not how my daughter would be treated. So I'll do it.
Wow. That's a very different outlook than I have been exposed to. It's just because our idea of once we get married, like the idea of what will happen, like
Yeah.
like from television and what we've seen with our moms and things around us and what stories we have heard. Even when a girl is getting married, people are start like, oh, now you can't get up this late. Oh, now you can't just leave your cup of tea here. You're like, you know what I mean? Because I am a single daughter. There's a lot of times when I'm drinking tea and I leave the cup on the table, and then it takes me an hour or two to get up and like keep it in the kitchen or something like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And even if I don't keep the cup, it's not the biggest issue in the whole world. Like,
Mm.
it's fine. But yeah, like once my mom here and there, sometimes she mentions like right now it's fine, but like once you you get married, you kind of need to do all of this on your own, or like. But
Yeah.
she's like, oh, you never know. Like, I would like you to go to a household which would have like a help and stuff, but you still should be in a habit of doing these things, like that kind of
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, like, okay.
I guess we've been brought up that way, like thinking, we need to be like nice. We can't be like argumentative or
See,
like
it's not like
uh
us not arguing is nice. See, I don't consider that
yeah,
as
that's the
nice.
thing. Yeah, but that's what like this idea of, this perfect like
Bahu.
daughter-in-law is.
Yeah.
Yeah, like will do whatever. She's like nice, she'll do whatever you ask her to do. She will like wake up early, cook, clean, stuff like that.
Like do all the chores and like make everything like breakfast and like then lunch and then dinner and everything in
Yeah.
between. She'll serve whoever comes home. She'll make tea and like 10 different type of dishes. She can't just be like, she
Yeah.
can't just like cook. She needs to cook stuff like 10 different like she needs to know fancy stuff as well. Like, yeah, it's a big responsibility. And then if they have kids, then she has to do all of that along with managing kids as well. And then
And I guess like for like modern times, I think like all of that plus work, it's never
yeah,
about like dividing
no.
the household work. It's like added upon the girl. Like even if she works, she has to do all these things. Like this plus on the work.
Yeah. I think, the mother-in-law story you told, which where she's like, I don't want my daughter to do it, so I don't want you to do it, kind of thing. She's kind of like imagining, not imagining, but she's kind of considering you as her daughter and
Yeah.
things like that. But the households which expect the bahu to do all of the chores or all of these things, they don't put the boy and the girl at the same level. That's why we're
Mm.
saying like daughter-in-laws can never be daughters for those kind of mother-in-laws, because if they
Yep.
expect
Yep.
that much, then they're like, if you're going for work, priority should be my
Mm.
son. the house and the housework, and then your
Yeah.
job. We don't want you to work, but because you want to work, you need to manage your work and all of these things. That's the only way. But I don't think they would say the same to their daughters, or they would expect the same, because a daughter would be like, no, I want to make my own career. Like, I can hire someone for all of this stuff.
Mm, I guess they will expect the same from their daughters. I mean, once they're married, like not in the household, like her family, but I think like they expect her to take care of the household stuff like once she gets married.
Well, I have heard that line though. A lot of people are like, "Oh, like you don't need a job." So a lot of like girls, they just study and study, bachelors and then masters, and they're like, "Yeah, you have education now, and now you
Yeah.
can just we'll show that, and then get you married to a good household, and then you have to just manage that. That's all." I get what you mean. Like they would expect the same from their daughters as well, expecting them to follow the rules of the in-laws and go by their rules. It doesn't matter what they think is the right rules. They want them to follow that. And that's where the girls also think this is normal. Like they can't stand up for themselves because their parents are saying that, the society they live in, because
Like they see an example every day. And even like TV shows and movies, they show that it's everything got to do with like adjustment. Like once you're married, you have
they
to
do adjust
adjust.
and
Yeah.
then sacrifice.
I read a recent post from She the People, which is
Yeah.
like I think an Indian yeah, like company,
That's a pretty
and
good
it said
page. I came across so many things on
yeah,
that page. I don't know, but it's a pretty good page. Yeah.
yeah, I love that page. So there was a post about like marrying young,
Yeah.
and I'm quoting here like they say like we don't want that girl for our son. She is 27. We won't be able to mold her into how we want her to be. So
Oh, that's
yes.
deep.
Yeah. So it's all about like you know how like girls should be married by a certain age. It's I think like it's got to do everything with this. Like they want to mold her as how the mother-in-law is, like taking care of
They want,
husband, family.
yeah.
Yeah, they want someone to kind of replace the mother-in-law because she's getting older.
Oh my fucking god. But it's crazy to think the way they're like portraying. Like, so you marry them young when they are like still like finding and discovering
Yeah,
themselves.
yeah,
And then
yeah.
they're like, this is the set of rules. We are preparing you for this job that our mom has been doing.
And because after a certain age, like girls, of course, have already developed their value system or their ideologies, and it's harder for them to change. And I guess
Yeah.
that's why they don't prefer older brides.
Oh, yeah.
I
Yeah.
never like got that idea like why was older bride like why should girls marry young and why like after a certain age like they're kind of like oh my god she still isn't married. Of course it's got to do with like you know kids and stuff, but it's also got to do with this, and it was mind blowing. And I was like, yeah, this all makes sense.
So when we say kids and stuff, that means like if you are older than 30, it's difficult for women to get pregnant, so they want them young so they can at least have two kids before 30. And like, and pretty much I feel like it's all about molding them into be a to be the daughter-in-law, isn't it? Like
Yeah,
nobody remembers what she studied, what she's good at. She's just a daughter-in-law in
yeah,
the end.
definitely.
Like, and then the society just measures her on how good daughter-in-law she is. And you know, have you heard that line where it's like, oh, the mother-in-law lets the daughter-in-law go to work? Like they let her do it. They let
Oh
her do
yeah.
whatever she wants. And I'm like, who are they to let her? You know what I mean? Especially even when they have like older kids. I've seen people having kids that are like 10-year-old or something. They're like, yeah, they let her do this. They let her open a business or something. I'm like, what do you mean you let her? She has a 10-year-old. What's the age when they don't have a hold on you?
I guess like that's when like she kind of starts taking over like finances and how it's spent all over the house. I think like that's when they give like sort of control to the daughter-in-law. I think, I don't know.
I feel like until like the mother-in-law isn't able to do her tasks, like, and kids are like grown enough to like move out or like go to college or something. I don't know. I feel like there is always this one hole. It depends on the mother-in-law how equal she feels, because that's what the mother-in-law went through as well. She's like, I came to this house at this age and I have been managing this by this, and now you have to do it.
It's almost like if I can do it, then you can do it, even though they
Yeah.
don't consider the like how much forward we have already come as a society. They're still in that mindset, like, because they have been treated that way from their mother-in-law, so
Yeah.
it just like passes down.
See, I don't mind a girl having all that responsibility. You know what I mean? Like getting up, managing her. It's her own house. It's her own husband. It's her own
Yeah,
thing, but it
yeah,
has to be on her terms. Not like
yeah.
anyone putting that expectation on her. And then the guys are like, but this is your job. Like to clean, to put my clothes in, like in the proper place, or like give me breakfast every morning. This is your job. My
Yeah,
mom has been doing this for so long, and now you
yeah.
are my wife, so you are supposed to do it.
You,
I'm like,
yeah, yeah.
that's small
No.
things, like small thing, like
Yeah.
no, like you're a grown-ass man, go to the kitchen and eat whatever you want to eat, like,
Yes.
or maybe
Yeah.
cook your own breakfast for once in a
So,
while, like, and don't be offended with it, like, oh, you didn't give me breakfast this morning, or like something like that, like, be a
or
grown-ass
even
man.
like I have seen a couple who, even if the wife goes to work and the
Yeah.
husband goes to work, like
Yeah.
when they come back, it's
Yeah.
still like wife has to come home and then cook, no
Cook.
matter how
Yeah.
tired she is. Like
Yeah.
she's the
And
one, like all the responsibility is upon her,
yeah.
and he's like, oh, I'm so hungry, like could you cook dinner, even though like she might have more like a stressful day, or
Yeah.
like it works in an environment where it is like physically harder than the husband, but it's still like a wife's job to do all of this.
And also, like, she can't even just make anything. She has to make what he wants to eat.
Yeah.
Like, I
Yes.
know someone who sometimes
Yeah.
who sometimes is like, I want to eat this and nothing
Mm.
else. And then his wife has to, like, if there is a missing ingredient, she has to go at night and like get it, like, and then make it for him. And it's like, why
Mm.
can't you fucking adjust and eat whatever she's cooking? You're getting a ready-made meal. So what else is expected of her, like of ideal bahu? What do you think? We talked about like
I think like
cooking and
she is, yeah. So I think like she is always the link between two families. So of course in our part of the society, like when two of you come together to get married, it's more about like two families coming in and getting
together.
married.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's never about like the couple. It's like
Yeah.
families and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And
Yeah.
then she always has to be the one who like calls both sides. Like I've seen, rarely it is the guy who calls his mother-in-law or father-in-law. It's mostly the girl who like takes care of her family, like calls and then lets them know about like everything that's going on, or like even if they have a puja, so invite them, stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she has to take care of like the mother-in-law, father-in-law, and her husband as well. So she always needs to keep both sides happy.
Yeah. See, I have this conflicting situation. So I don't know any close couples, like in a way that, what they do for each other's in-laws. Like what I have seen is, of course, the daughter-in-law is keeping full care in the house because they live in the same house. Like in India,
Yeah.
you live
Yeah.
in the same house as usually you live in the same house as your mother-in-law and father-in-law. So the girl gets to keep, active care for then whatever they
Yeah.
need. But for the girl's parents, they don't live in that house, right? They're far
Yeah.
away. But I
Yeah.
don't see the guys putting the same type of effort a girl is expected to put. And I have heard some of my cousins being like, no, they do, like in the sense like help their parents as well.
Yeah.
Like no, they
Yeah.
call, they ask for anything. And I just don't know what's the truth, to be honest. Like, I don't see, I
Because
don't,
I've hardly seen a balance of how, like, the girl is probably doing probably like 70% of the work, meanwhile the guy
like
isn't
keeping
doing
them
the same.
together.
It's like,
I think
yeah,
70% of the work to keep the peace between both families, like handling, because there's so much more emotional.
70% as in, like 70%,
This is our guess, okay? There's nothing stats about it.
yeah, or like more time like dedicated towards the mother-in-law, father-in-law. It's almost like once you are married, like forget about your parents, like we are the new
Yeah,
parents sort of
yeah.
thing,
But
and
they don't,
call
that's what
us
it
like
is.
mom, dad, and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And I'm like, wait, I have my own mom and dad. I don't know, like it feels just
yeah.
feels awkward calling someone else mom and dad.
See, I'm
I
okay to
mean, of
call
course, it
them.
depends on you, like if you want to do it,
Yeah,
but in my case, I would never want to call someone like mom and dad because it just feels too weird for me.
yeah. I think I would never give them the same words as my parents. Like when I call them
Yeah,
like my dad, like papa and like
yeah,
mama and
yeah.
stuff. Like I think I'll just change it a little bit. But they would, for some reason, I can't imagine myself giving the same kind of um, respect to them until they treat me well. Like I will be very reserved in the start. You know what I mean? Like, but that's where we come with like how they treat me as their daughter-in-law,
Mm,
because people usually that's why they want to do more than one kids, because then there is some, usually they have a boy who takes care of them when the girl gets married and stuff, right? So in my situation, being a single daughter, I have a very different perspective in this whole situation, because I'm like, if my parents are sick, can I go and live with them? And is that socially acceptable? Because when the guy's parents are sick, you are expected to take care of them 100%, right? But if my parents are sick, if even if my husband is busy or whatever, can I myself can go and take care of them? Like I'm not even expecting him to do it, but I'll go and take
yeah,
care of them, but
definitely.
can I?
Yeah.
But that's the thing, like I even asked a couple of people like, okay, so if my parents are sick, for how long can I go and live with them? They're like
Mm,
a week or two. And I'm like, but
yeah. And
no,
then you have to come
but
back.
they need to come back. And I was
Yeah.
imagining that. I'm like,
Or even like
but
going to see them. Like this has happened in my own family, and my mom had to like ask her like to visit her own mom and dad, and I'm like, wait, that's a weird concept.
I don't. Sometimes I feel like, is it just because we are a new generation? But come on, the older generation has to wonder, like, why do I ask to go to my own parents' house? Like,
Yeah, I know.
they are
Yeah.
my parents. Like, why can't I just
Mm.
get up and go
Like
to their
go and see
house?
them.
Like, why do I have to
Yeah.
plan? Why don't like announce everyone? Like, block out a time and then go?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
when I can just get up and go to a grocery store, why the fuck can't I go to my mom's house? That's what makes me so angry about the whole situation, because people right now are like, because I am turning 27 soon, my mom has that in her mind. Like, other people are like, oh yeah, now they will get her married and look for boys or whatever. And
Mm.
I'm like, but I don't wanna. I'm not in a mental space to do that. There's a lot to commit. There's a lot to like. I'm not saying that I will get a mother-in-law like that, or a father-in-law like that, or a partner like that. I'm not saying that, but of course there are chances of that. If there is the slightest chance, I want to be in a space where I can stand up for myself. I just can't be like, oh yeah, we'll figure it out later. Like, I don't think that that works, because that's a big thing here. It's like, no, the family is good, they are good, the guy's educated, blah blah blah, and like, everything else would be figured out afterwards. And I'm like, can you are you okay if I divorce afterwards? Like, how we did the divorce topic recently? Like, are you okay for me to divorce and come back and live with my parents? Will you live would you leave me to, like, would you let me live freely? Like, because I'm not saying like, oh, you're already thinking about divorce. No, I'm just thinking of all the possibilities.
we've been talking about what is expected or out of the daughter-in-law, and I also wanted to go like what changes for her. How is she actually like treated? So I have seen cases where she is kind of treated as an outsider, even though like she has left her whole like life, previous life, and then come into like your house. She's still like treated as an outsider and by that I mean like she isn't considered as a voice when they're taking decisions, or
Yeah.
even when they're deciding something, like they don't consult her, or like they go somewhere else to talk about like their family matter even though she's family. Have you
Yeah,
seen this?
that's
It's, yeah,
see,
something.
what I have realized is it takes a lot for a daughter-in-law to be accepted than a son-in-law.
The son-in-law is always treated in a princely manner, let's say.
Yeah, yeah.
There is a huge difference, like princely manner, and then you're like a maid. Not like all families.
Yeah, we're not talking about a lot of family. We are just talking
Yeah,
about those particular ones that are kind of around us.
yeah,
um, but I feel like a girl takes time to be accepted fully, and her mistakes are not as forgiven as a son-in-law's, and that's when I say like they're not treated like daughters in their in-laws house. That
yeah,
daughter would be
yeah.
forgiven for some every other mistake she does, but not the daughter-in-law. Every mistake she does would be remembered.
And it would be like, your parents didn't taught you this, like how
And
could that
that
happen? Or the blame comes over to her mom and dad,
parents,
like how could
yeah.
you like teach your daughter to be like this a certain way?
It's pretty annoying that way, that how much a daughter-in-law needs to prove. And even
Yeah.
then, I don't know if she's fully accepted.
Yeah, I also wanted to say like, so there is one where like they're kind of trying to mold her to be perfect, but if she turns out to be a little more controlling of, not like controlling, but they see her as controlling of her
Yeah.
husband, or like if she voices her opinions and even stuff like that, they kind of say that, oh, she's controlling my son, like she's taken
Yeah.
away my son, she's a witch.
I don't know what the witch, but
Like they say that
but
thing,
no,
those things.
I
It's so
net I
funny.
get it what you mean. Like they're like, oh, my
Yeah,
son has changed since like she
yeah,
came into his life, and like he wasn't like this. He didn't used to eat these things, or like, like small things. Even if she changes his taste in food, it's like she changed him. He used to eat this thing and blah blah blah. You do real. I'm like, you do realize your son just wasn't exposed to stuff which she just,
yeah.
and now he's just making his own opinions and just thinks that is better, so he's just acting that way or something. Like, it's pretty hilarious how everything is blamed on the girl. When we were talking about the girl feeling guilty, a lot of girls feel guilty of like not having me time. And if they marry young, like you fell into this pleasing, people's pleaser mentality where you want to please everyone. You just want everyone to be happy with you.
Even if they're not married young, it's almost like you've been brought up in that mentality
Yeah.
that you always want to like please them, and
Yeah.
you've like seen this happen in the society. Your parents like expect it out of you, and they have been like telling you as a like kid that you should be this way instead of
Yeah.
this way. And I guess like even if you're older and then you get married, I think it's just the mentality that goes
Yeah.
on like that.
Because they always tell you like, right now you're a daughter, but one day you'll be a daughter-in-law, and that's a whole different
Yes.
game. Even though it shouldn't be. You should be just a daughter, like, to another person. Because if you're expected to call mom and dad, and you're expected them to treat like your own parents, then you should be treated that way as well. Like, people shouldn't treat daughters lower than their sons. When we're talking about, when they say like, even with their daughter, they would expect the same, that once they get married, they'll do all of that things. So like, for those people, you shouldn't degrade your daughter to someone's like
Maid or
maid, or even not even a maid. I feel like we are decreasing the value of that work. It's just because nobody values that work in that household. The household that doesn't value a woman's cooking, like, are like, make this for me, otherwise I won't eat it. Like, what the fuck, dude? You're getting a cooked meal. Just shut up and eat it. Like, like sometimes you can make suggestions. I'm not saying like you have to, but if that can't be made, just move on and just suggest something that can be made in the house with the house ingredients and stuff like that.
Yeah. I think that's where the son's upbringing comes in as well. Like, we always go through this, how, like, it's the mentality. Anyways, so yeah, I feel like if he sees that his mom is like a working mother and kind of like takes care of the household chores and everything that we said like is expected out of a daughter-in-law, I think he also expects his wife to do the same thing.
Just because, like, oh, my mother do it, why can't you do it?
Yeah, why
Like,
can't you do it? Yeah.
yeah. But I also think, like, see, it all comes from how the mother-in-law will set the tone. See, we are getting inspired from that first story where the mother-in-law is like, you don't have to get up in the morning. I don't want you to do it, like, kind of thing. And the mother-in-law is setting up the tone for the whole thing. And she must
Yeah.
have also
This
taught her
is,
son
I
that
just
way as well.
remembered. Yeah, I read another story in the same account. So it was about a daughter-in-law who hasn't been married yet and goes to her like boyfriend's house, and then she kind of like after eating, you know how like you are kind of trained to collect all the plates and take it to the kitchen and wash it, even though like you're not in their family. So she was like starting to do that, and her soon to be mother-in-law was like, don't do all of this. They will start to expect this out of you.
Expect that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
just like
that's a very good one.
let the son like do his own plates and you do your own. Because if you start doing it, he will kind of expect you to do it the next time or till he gets older. So yeah.
Yeah. Why we started discussing daughter-in-laws cannot be daughters is sometimes I think about it because I'm at the age where my parents want me to get married. I know I have to get married, but I don't wanna. And my own thing is I have responsibilities currently. And I don't want to take on this extra responsibility which I know I cannot perform.
Yeah.
And that's when I was thinking about how why what responsibilities I'm wondering. And that is like, since we were young we are told like, right now you're okay, you're at your parents' house, but once
Yeah.
you get married you can't do this or you can't do that or you have to do this. And even I looked at couples or my own sister-in-laws or my sisters who got married, it just looked very stressful in a way that I couldn't think about having the career I want or the life I want. And that's the thing I'm trying to make my parents understand. I'm at
Yes.
that stage. And
Yes.
that's why we want to talk about why I know I could never be a daughter to someone else in the same way I am for my parents.
Yeah.
You know what I'm like, or treated and respected. Like how many
Yeah.
mistakes my parents have forgiven, like, and they let me be. And I don't
Yeah.
think anyone would else would take that much shit from me. And
Yeah. That's how like we've been brought up.
yeah,
Like you need
and
to change once you get married. You need to like behave a certain way.
but that's the thing, that one ceremony just changes everything. I can't, like, even though they're mentally telling you this has to change that, but you don't know until you get the job, is it? Like,
Yeah.
when you're
Yeah.
like signing up for the job, you're like, this is your job description, but
Yeah.
you're like, okay, and then you start
Well,
the
in
job,
marriage
and then you're like,
there is like no job description. You just like start the next day. You just become a whole new person the next day. It just
that's the
like
thing.
what you said about like changing after marriage, like after a day, it's so insane. It's like once you like get married, you just like change, you have to change your whole persona and have to adjust into another family.
Because the way you need to wear clothes, you can't just sit in a pajama at your own home. You're like, need to wear the certain clothes. You have to be in a certain way, present in a certain way, talk in a certain way, do some certain duties. And if you don't do that, you're not the perfect bahu. And I'm like, I've never heard I'm not a perfect daughter because I did something wrong. Like,
Yeah.
I am a
Yeah.
daughter. That's it. There is no perfect daughter or a perfect, like,
And why do we need to like create this, checklist of this is how a daughter-in-law should be? Or a
yeah,
daughter should be
so,
trained as, like she needs to know how to cook and stuff like that. So
yeah,
yeah, we
yeah.
just wanted to like portray all of that.
Yeah, we just wanted to have a discussion. I think I guess like I wanted to have more about this discussion because
Yeah.
I was looking at people around me and what my future
And I
is.
like love this topic because I didn't really think about all of this before you kind of put this topic forward. It has got me thinking about all of these dynamics between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, which is awesome.
Yeah. If you liked our topic for this week and would like someone else to listen to this podcast and know more about this topic, please feel free to share. Also, if you have any thoughts regarding this topic and would like to suggest a new one for the future, please feel free to comment, discuss, or DM us or any of our social media platforms.
We are Browned Off by Society for Facebook, YouTube, and Insta, and Brown Society for Twitter. Or email us at brownedoffbysociety@gmail.com. Also, if you would like to know more about today's topic, head on to our Insta and Facebook. And finally, thank you for listening to us today, and see you next time. Bye.